I'd like to welcome everyone to the February meeting of the Housing Opportunity Fund. At this time, we are going to announce that we do not have a quorum of members. So we are going to make some changes to the agenda as it is written. We will not start with the roll call. I'd like to give a few minutes before we get to the roll call. So we're actually going to start today with public comment.
Oh, and quick note, we do have ASL interpretation available. To view the ASL interpretation, pin Chad or Nick M to your screen to follow along, not actually Jonas, so keep that in mind. All right, and for public comment, we have Megan Hammond over Zoom. Megan? Oh, I think you're muted, Megan.
Classic. I started out 2025 forgetting to unmute. Thank you, Eric.
No worries.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Megan Hammond. I am the Executive Director of the Fair Housing Partnership of Greater Pittsburgh. I'm here today to underscore that the Housing Opportunity Fund, as City Fund, has a platform to emphasize that equity is using data and the application of data to allocate limited funds efficiently. You may not know that Pittsburgh City Code legislated fair housing protections nearly a decade before the Federal Fair Housing Act was passed in 1968, and that the city has added protected classes throughout the years, including recently. 2025 brings uncertainty as we no longer have the additional COVID-19 related funds that we have seen invested into affordable housing. However, the Housing Opportunity Fund existed before and continues existing after COVID-19 because Pittsburgh values developing and preserving affordable housing for all of our low-income Pittsburghers. And so today I'm asking the advisory board to consider two priorities in its ongoing discussions amidst the changes that we're experiencing in 2025. One is in recognition that the HOF $10 million is inherently less money than the demand on its programs, that the advisory board considers expanding the use of a lottery system for how funding or applications are awarded. For example, the Housing Assistance Program, or HAP, annually receives applications that far exceeds the available funds, and eligible applications are now selected via a lottery. And so I asked the advisory board to consider adding lottery selection requirements for units that come online via the rental gap program and the for sale development program. Two, given the ongoing affordable housing crisis and the limits of that $10 million, for the advisory board to begin discussing potential strategies for increasing the fund beyond the $10 million in the next budget cycle that will occur next fall and winter. In short, Pittsburgh's commitment to affordable housing and fair housing gives me hope for what we can accomplish together in 2025. Thank you all and appreciate your time.
Thank you, Megan. We really appreciate your continued participation, especially in light of some of the open board seats that we have. It's really important for us to be having these fair housing conversations. So thank you for continually coming and supporting the dialogue. I do not believe we have any other public comment.
No, we should not. And I believe we can now move to roll call.
We absolutely can move to roll call. We do have a quorum at this point. So I am going to call the roll call. Lena Andrews.
Hi, I'm here.
Thanks, Lena. We know that Tanika Harris is not able to join us today. Karen Garrett.
Present.
Thank you, Karen. Ellie Fisher is also not able to join us today. I do not believe Councilwoman Gross is with us online. Jerome Jackson. Deidre Washington.
Present.
Thank you, Deidre. Marcus Reed, Alan Cisco, James Reed,
Present.
Adrian Wanaha present. And those are the members at this point. We will hear a little bit more about membership later in the meeting. We are going to move to the review and acceptance of minutes from January 7th. Hopefully everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes. Do we have any questions or additions to the January minutes? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes from January 7th?
So moved.
Thank you, James. Do we have a second?
Second.
Was that Karen?
Yes.
Thank you, Karen. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any abstentions? And I could see all the hands up, so we do not have any negative votes on the minutes. Now we're going to move into agenda item D, and we're going to have some conversations about compliance.
Absolutely. So we have a lot to talk about in regards to compliance this time around. First, I just want to announce to the advisory board members present that we are expecting you all to complete conflict of interest forms that we will be sending out following this meeting by next month. So that way we can avoid any and all conflict of interest of the advisory board members. And then moving on to sort of our main thing for this agenda item is the Sunshine Act. So on behalf of the URA, I want to acknowledge that the January notice posting deadline was missed. And we have since posted that both online and in a printed newspaper since to make up for this. So the next meeting is officially scheduled for March 4th, 2025 from 3 to 5 p.m. And as you can see on the right side of the screen, this is the same notice that we put out, all over. It details our meeting schedule, which will be the first Tuesday of each month from 3 to 5 p.m. Throughout all of 2025. It is located in the lower level conference room at 412 Boulevard of the Allies, Pittsburgh, PA 15219, over Zoom, and can also alternatively be viewed by any member of the public through the City Channel Pittsburgh YouTube page. If you or anyone that you know requires an accessibility accommodation, please email hof@ura.org to attend both virtually and in person. And then the last piece that we need to do to get into compliance is the advisory board must vote to ratify the January confirmations because they were rendered invalid by the lack of the announcement. So first of all is the December 2024 meeting minutes.
We would need to have a motion to accept the December 2024 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Karen. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Deidre. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
I only heard 3 ayes. So
Aye.
any 4. Any abstentions? Any votes in the negative? Great. We have that approval of our meeting minutes from December. We also had a relatively specific HAP program guideline motion. Eric, do you have that language that we could reread?
No, I do not. Kiana, do you think you'd be able to pull that up from the SharePoint?
Hi, it's Kiana Wassler, Chief Housing Officer at the URA. I think I can restate the motion to be close to what we stated. If you give me one moment, I can also look up the minutes from December. Was that looking at staff? Was that in January? The HAP guideline motion? Okay.
It should be in either the PowerPoint from last month.
Sorry.
We're just having a quick pause. And a quick note to members, the hof@ura.org email is something that can be given to members of the public who may have questions, would like to present, may like to make public comment as well. So please remember that hof@ura.org email. As we're in the community, making sure that folks have that contact information in hand is important.
Working on it, sorry.
If it is easier, Kiana, for you to just remind the group of what we voted on, we can do that as well.
Yeah, I can do that. Sorry. We had discussion at the last meeting about the homeowner assistance program or HAP program guideline changes that were recommended in previous meetings. The final, what I remember to be the final moved motion is language saying that the program will change from a deferred loan and a grant to being a grant with a 10-year deed restrictive covenant. So that's the major change that's happening with the program that the advisory board voted on at the last meeting.
And we had made that step to make sure that we were really facilitating ease of use of the program, clarity of expectations, and also to reduce the administrative burden.
Right. And make it a more equitable program for folks in the city who need these types of programs.
So today, the actual motion language, we do not have to confirm the original motion language, but we do have to confirm the vote. Would that be appropriate?
Yes, I believe so.
So we will utilize the motion language from our January meeting. And we just need to re-vote on accepting the language that was presented in the January meeting. Do we have someone that would like to move for us to take that vote at this time?
I'm happy to attempt that that motion. I'm just going to rely on the language that we have from the last meeting minutes. I move to change the HAP program to a grant program with a 10-year deed restriction.
Do we have a second to that motion?
And I second.
I think Karen was the first to second.
Yes.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those nay votes? Any abstentions?
I think I have to abstain from this.
And that's Lena Andrews abstaining. Thank you. We are ratifying the motion from January's meeting.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on, I'd like to welcome David DiBernardo from our residential lending.
And we do have Andrea Boykowitz here in person from Oakland Planning and Development Corporation.
Hey, Richard.
Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon. My name is David DiBernardo. I'm a lending analyst in the residential lending department. I am here today to request authorization to increase an existing for sale development program grant agreement with Oakland Planning and Development Corporation from $420,000 up to $600,000. The purpose of this grant is for the rehabilitation of 6 for sale single-family units, which will remain affordable to families at or below 80% of area median income for 99 years. These 6 units are all located on Edith Place in the South Oakland neighborhood of Pittsburgh. Each unit has 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The For Sale Development Program grant was authorized by the Housing Opportunity Fund Board in November 2022. This grant closed in March of 2023, and the renovations were completed in December of 2023. Since then, OPDC has worked with an agent attempting to sell these units to qualified home buyers. After a challenging year, these units have not yet sold. In a renewed effort to sell these properties, OPDC recently went through the process of meeting with several realtors and selected a new realtor who has significant experience in the sale of affordable housing units in Pittsburgh. With this new partnership, OPDC is working to sell all 6 units this year. Due to the time that has passed since the acquisition and renovation, OPDC has incurred significant holding costs for these properties, well above those of the original budget. This grant increase will help cover those soft costs. With this increase, the For Sale Development Program grant will be up to $100,000 per unit, which is within the current For Sale Development Program guidelines. Joining us today from Oakland Planning and Development Corporation is the Executive Director, Andrea Boykowitz. You want to come up to the microphone?
Hi, my name is Andrea Boykowicz. I am the Executive Director at Oakland Planning and Development Corporation. And please excuse me, Deputy Director Ellie Fisher, who sits on your board, would normally be the one presenting this project to you. She is sick today and I am pinch hitting. But I am very grateful for your willingness to consider this increase. As David was just saying, the chief trouble that we have had in holding these properties for this long is that they were financed, the acquisition was financed with private debt. So we have interest as well as the taxes and utilities and insurance that we are holding. Sitting vacant as they have also, two of these properties have incurred some additional maintenance costs. We have actually, though they are freshly renovated, one of them has incurred some problems that we need to correct, and therefore we have actually been engaged in some active construction in the last 2 months, which is very close to being completely complete. We have, in addition to the private debt that went into these, a partnership through the Oakland Development Fund. Some of the ODF's money is also in the acquisition of these properties, and we've been drawing on our partners with the ODF, the University of Pittsburgh and UPMC to help us to spread the word amongst their employees of this opportunity to live very close to work. And when they do work with us in that way, we have noted an increase in the interest level. We're hoping that interest rates having come down as they are, that we will have a little bit better luck in supporting our low and moderate income would-be homebuyers to connect with this great opportunity in South Oakland. I am very happy to take any questions you might have.
Andrea, is there any sense of why in the portfolio these particular units maybe have had less enthusiasm and interest?
It's a great question, Adrian. Being perfectly frank, the configuration of these homes, which were all built around about the 1910s, 19-teens, as working class housing, they are row houses. They are small in frontage, and they sit extremely close to the street. Many of the buyers or the would-be buyers that we are working with, for whom home ownership is a completely new venture, many of whom do not come from families with any kind of generational history of home ownership. This doesn't tend to fit immediately with what people envision home ownership to look like. So in addition to overcoming people's hurdles With regards to assumptions about whether or not homeownership even exists in South Oakland, it does. We are sort of up against, this isn't the thing that people have in their minds when they think about venturing forth to purchase their first home. That being said, the renovations are super cute. And if you are inside, they have great views of the Cathedral of Learning. Truly, they are actually adorable. I live not too far away on Parkview, north of the Boulevard, which is about 3 blocks from where these houses are located. And I can attest to the excellence of their location. They are handy to public transit. They have very easy access to the park. And our hope is really that these are considerable selling points, as is our determination and commitment to maintaining them to be affordable to people making at or below 80% area median income. It's strongly of our opinion that this is something which is a great opportunity. The additional problem that we have had with these, being perfectly frank, is the size. So these are all 2-bedroom houses. And while they're comfortably proportioned, they're not tight. A number of the people that we have been working with, might have 2 children, perhaps a third on the way. And it is hard to sort of envision how to fit a growing family into a house like this with modern assumptions about occupancy and how that should work. These were all homes that were originally built actually as a kind of a private development for working class occupants around the turn of the century. Assumptions about how big your family would be to fit into a 2-bedroom like house like this were very different. But they do provide ample room for a small family, and we think that they are well configured to meet the needs of many of the people who work in Oakland and might like to shorten their commutes.
Can I ask one
Yeah.
follow-up to that? Are these homes able to be retrofitted for accessibility?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. It would be difficult. The entry sits above the level of the street, and the nature of Edith Place, which is a single block of actually a private street, is such that the sidewalk is not accessible. Even so, there is not, I think in some cases, the clearance is about 18 inches of sidewalk in front of the steps going up to each of these front doors. They all have small yards or small rear areas there that similarly have a step down. They sit up off of the ground. None of them has an inhabitable or useful basement. They have utilities located in the cellar underneath. So there's no way to reconfigure the house to be accessible to somebody on wheels.
Thank you.
That said, it's not that many steps, not as many steps as people have often encountered in South Oakland. I think it's about 6.
Thank you. That's helpful. Do we have other questions or additional information needed? I'm hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the increase in the grant for Oakland Planning and Development through the For Sale Development Program? Typically, the chair does not make motions, but I am happy in this particular circumstance, given that we have a pretty limited group of folks. I would recommend and so move to the Housing Opportunity Fund to increase the grant to Oakland Planning and Development Corporation. And the increase would total $180,000, and that is for the 6 units, 2-bedroom and 1-bathroom single-family units. This particular enhancement to the grant will continue with the deed restriction to households below 80% of AMI for 99 years. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, James. Anyone need to abstain on this vote? I don't believe we have members needing to abstain. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 So I heard all of the voices, so no abstentions and no votes to the nay. Thank you to OPDC for coming back to us We're happy to support the project. We'd love to have an update. So I'm sure Ellie can provide us with an update, but we would like to know how everything's going and if we can be helpful with the marketing.
You are so very kind, and we would appreciate any assistance that you can provide in helping us to spread the word. Thank you so much.
Sure. If you have any marketing materials, if you could send them out to the group, especially the group members that weren't able to be here for part of the conversation, then we can ask folks to, be on the lookout.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So to that point, I think that one of the things that we have not done as the Housing Opportunity Fund is actually with our projects, requested and received marketing materials. I think that that is one thing that is very low hanging fruit for all of us as members. If we're supporting these projects through funding, we should also be supporting these projects through making sure that our constituents are also understanding that these properties, programs, supports are available. So I think something that would be great going forward is if all of our partners, if they could provide those to us, then we could be part of the longevity of supporting projects and not just from a funding perspective. So thank you. But that's something I would love us to put on the agenda. Since we have URA staff here that will be presenting these programs, if that's something that we have at our disposal, I think it would be great if we could start getting those out. All right, demonstration dollars. We had some fantastic working sessions. James is going to lead our conversation on those.
Sure. So I can pull up either the document that we worked on or sort of the more like cut up, easier to digest document that I made.
Let's go ahead and use what was circulated to the group with the other materials for this meeting. I think that'll be a good point for us to work from.
Yep.
So just kind of thinking about the best way to tackle this update. So I do want to start just by providing a little bit of the background as to the ground that we covered in these meetings. So we had a smaller working group, had 2 sessions, and also sent out materials via email to the advisory board to work on a collaborative document. And you can see the fruits of this process on the screen, and also if anyone has it pulled up, either printed or on their screen in front of them. And so really what these working session processes tried to do is put enough shape and detail around the innovation pilot and the urgent and emergency housing needs categories or buckets of funding that we talked about utilizing the demonstration dollars for. And so in terms of this breakdown, I'm hoping to have some discussion from advisory members who are here. And then I think, depending on the appetite and discussion, if we could entertain, a motion to approve these, I think that would be an ideal goal for this session, given in past meetings, we have talked about the urgency of having a plan that's actionable. And I think the guidance that we have here and the shape that we have here gets us in that direction. So with that being said, I'm going to talk through sort of the innovation pilot first, and just note, I'm not going to go through this and read it with detail, but I do want to highlight what I think are the most critical parts of this. And so the purpose of this is really to be able to channel our greater marketplace to solicit, ideas, forward-thinking ideas, initiatives, or changes to policy that can really increase our our ability to address housing needs and housing related challenges in the city. So, kind of thinking about that could be something looking at the existing programs that the HOF offers and, saying, oh, what if there's a tweak here? Or it could be something that's new. And we would invite, the general public, but also those who are practitioners and specialists in developing, or excuse me, in delivering for affordable housing or housing needs. We'd invite them all to come with new ideas and try to think through how they could address something specific in our ecosystem, something that is a challenge. And so some of the things that we thought about in terms of priorities would be scalability, the creativity of the pilot, the ability to address accessibility as usability, ADA compliance, income spectrum, and environmental sustainability. And you can see that also thinking if we're to entertain any ideas about improvements on, building construction or, any strategies that could be used to make delivering affordability easier, more cost effective. Those are other things that we've thought about. And so, the rest of this section of the document kind of breaks down into some additional characteristics. I think the key things to highlight here is that we're talking about being able to make a funding commitment for these pilots of at least 50,000 up to a total, years worth of allocation based on some of the factors that would go into that I just talked about and what would be necessary for the pilot really to try to advance. Some other things that we're talking about is really being mindful of, something that as Megan was talking about during public comment, our commitments to, fair housing, and I'm thinking about that more broadly and generally speaking, through, empowerment of community and community connection. And then, we're really looking for something that is going to be funded. The funding would go to an organization. So we had a robust discussion about what's the appropriate target level for these funds. And yes, we want to use these funds to deliver for individuals that have housing needs, but the direct applicants we're expecting to be would be those organizations or those developers whose efforts and services go to meeting individuals' needs. So this wouldn't be a pilot that would be used for more of sort of a individual social service or individual housing crisis need. It would all be through to the people who kind of operate those organizations in that ecosystem. And then there's, there's a list of application requirements. And I think what we're really trying to hit on the head with these application requirements is that we want these organizations to be able to demonstrate that they have put together a thoughtful, actionable pilot and thought about it in a way as to they understand the mechanisms that need to be at play and changed in order for them to develop or to produce, the innovation, and that they have thought through, and this goes to the scalability piece of this. They've thought through how do we take these demonstration dollars and continue on with the work if we're actually able to demonstrate a proof of concept through the pilot. So with that, I'm going to pause and see if there's any discussion on this particular item, and I welcome, all discussion.
And just a quick point to what James was sharing, you will see that there is innovation on the front sheet, the summary sheet, and then urgent emergency housing needs on the back sheet. You will not necessarily see a funding level associated with the emergent. The funding levels are those things that we have not yet determined, but the group felt that There are some grants that would be too small. So again, thinking on both pools of that $50,000 to the maximum of funds we have available. And that would really be determined by how many projects that we would like to fund during a specific year if we have targets. So I just wanted folks to understand that we're still talking about one pot of money that we will be, massaging through two different lenses.
Thank you for that clarification, Adrian.
Well, that's getting confusing to me personally, so I think I'm just reiterating it for my own purposes. But at this point in time, the dollars that we are looking at is $650,000, sort of total for both pools.
I'm not on the advisory board, but do
It's
have a
Kiana.
question. It's Kiana, Chief Housing Officer. I unfortunately was not able to attend either meeting, but just wanted to know if you came up with or had conversation about how these funds will be deployed. So innovation pilot seems like kind of speaking to what Megan Hammond brought up in the beginning of the meeting. We could open that as in a funding round with an RFP or some type of opportunity where we can look at different proposals against each other and make sure they fit into like what we're looking for innovation. But emergency feels like that maybe should be an open rolling application. Was there any conversation about those things?
Yes, we did have conversation about that, and you'll have to forgive me. I don't remember the exact recommendation that came out, but the general thought process was, as you were articulating, that for the innovation pilot, we would want to issue, I don't know if it's an RFP or, a call for some other type of call for innovative ideas, and have that, maybe it's one round in a year, maybe it's two, kind of depending on responses that you might get from the first round, or just staff capacity. And then on the emergency front, in order to actually serve effectively as an emergency fund, it would need to be on a rolling basis. And we had a lot of initial discussion about, especially on the emergency side, how do we structure that in a way that lowers the barriers so that we can have funding go out in that time critical passage, as opposed to, if this is one of the things we did talk about on that, is just thinking through a URA approval process with a board meeting, and how that timeline, depending on when an emergency happens, could change the response from an emergency response to a delayed response, and not be able to deliver that immediate relief that affected individuals would need. So we did have discussion about that, and I know we're really eager to continue to work with URA staff to understand how to structure, especially the urgent and emergency side of things.
And I think there was also, I think we are all feeling the pressure of, we want the dollars on the street. For urgent, emergent, we get into that place, that challenge that we experience with many of the funds that we have, where dollars being available, if we do an open, rolling process, there will be a time where they just run out. So also, we want to make sure that we can approach these needs, but since we don't know when they're coming and how they're coming, a rolling process seems like it makes the most sense, but we also have to just recognize and make the commitment to, we may address one emergent need in February and then two emergent needs in March, and then be done based on what those needs are. So for the pilots, we can plan a little bit more for timing of how the dollars roll out. But for the urgent, emergent needs, we're really not going to have the opportunity to do that. So I think the group felt comfortable with us addressing things as they come in, recognizing we may run out of funds. Maybe we have the opportunity to leverage other funds. Maybe we have the opportunity. I just had a conversation with a business that would like to start doing a profit donation related to housing issues. And I really tried to stress to them, you could leverage funds at the HOF. So private donors, corporate donors, are there ways for us to leverage other funds? But it's just that very clear and candid recognition that we will run out of money. We are destined to run out of money. We have $10 million. We will always run out of money. And I have a suspicion that urgent and emergent needs are going to come at us faster than we realize. So rolling sounded good. We want to be responsive, but we also know that being responsive, we may not be reviewing many applications.
Right.
Questions, thoughts, input on the innovation side of the housing demonstration proposal? Well, hearing none, would we like to move to the definition and discussion of urgent emergent need?
Yes, we can do that. So again, through the discussion and additional feedback through email, what we really tried to land on for urgent and emergency is really to be able to address immediate, unforeseen challenges that threaten the stability, safety, or well-being of residents in Pittsburgh. And again, I think it's worth really noting that we're talking about being able to provide this funding again to not at the individual level, but at the organizational level. So thinking about if there, for example, were a homeless shelter that experienced, maybe a burst pipe or a furnace failure or something like that, or another emergency at perhaps a rental, an affordable rental, something that would significantly impact residents and make it so they would not be able to return to their living quarters in a timely manner, something that would be very disruptive to their life. And you can see some of the things that we have identified. So, deteriorating building, natural disasters, condemnation, inhability of property, critical health and safety issues, things of that nature. Again, so we're talking about the most sort of a more dire category of needs here. And so we would want these funds to be available to help address that, recognizing that, they may not be able to go towards the full scale of need in any of these particular emergencies, but that they could provide a critical leverage point or a critical amount of funding that can be used to communicate to others that, hey, there's the HOF is backing this, and there's some folks in the ecosystem that really want to move to help address this. And trying to think through about HOF funds in a more holistic way. One of the things we talked about is really trying to limit these emergencies to things that would not be immediately solvable by pre-existing HOF programming. And so, so what we're really trying to do here is tackle things that truly come up as not having an easy solution or a path forward to resolving through existing funding or the ecosystem. So I'll kind of pause there. I know there are some other things if folks want to take a look and add any discussion or comment.
Just a quick point of clarification before we get there. There is a possibility that a currently funded HOF organization could apply for these funds. But again, it would really be separate and outside the current grants that they're utilizing. And it wouldn't be something that would be more predictably solvable in, say, rental gap funding or homeowner assistance program funding. Is that accurate?
I think that captures the conversation, yeah.
Thoughts on the emergency housing needs definition? The type of characteristics that have been brought forward, really that this is separate and distinct from more traditional funding streams. This would be for folks 80% AMI and below because that's the legislation. We will have to continue to consider how we break the funds up because we do have legislative requirements. Our partners here at the URA have, given us endless support related to that. We'll continue to need to talk about that as we're reviewing applications.
Are there any comments? It's kind of quiet here.
Did the group do such a good job that they were just reading your mind?
I personally, I think that, I mean, I had been following, wasn't able to join any of the meetings, but I had been following a lot of the summaries that had been shared with all of us. And I thought it was well thought out, in terms of what we're addressing. However, I was most interested in the timeline for getting funds to, for the emergent. And the timeline by which if, something would happen tomorrow or the next day, and how soon could we as a board really address the need? And also what part of the committee would be reviewing even the RFPs on the other side?
So those are actually two questions. I believe that was Karen.
Yes, it is.
So those are two questions. I see one side much more related to the URA staff, and then one side much more related to us as a board. I think the dollars on the ground question, I'm going to put a pin in for a quick second. The way that we have traditionally reviewed applications, we have, as a group, reviewed them in these meetings. So the URA has brought them forward, and we as a group have reviewed them. I think that lends really well to the innovation process. That may lend less well to the urgent and emergent need process. One of the things that I was hoping we could discuss briefly is we have not done votes on applications electronically. I think that the URA legal team had suggested that those conversations are part of Sunshine. However, we can make those available, I believe. I think we need to get a little legal consult on those. We do also have the opportunity, as we remember, we have subcommittees that we can, and working groups that we can establish. We also could have a designated working group to do funding votes for these applications. We have not heard anything from URA Legal that suggests we could not do that. Again, it would be subject to transparency to the public. But as long as we met that requirement, I do believe we could have a working group related to those applications. Now, all HOF members may want to participate in that working group. That may be the case, but we would then sort of take it off the regular meeting agenda and have it specifically encompassed in a separate meeting. Again, subject to all of that transparency that we as a board would be subject to, but that is one of our options for something like this emergent, urgent application review process. And I did not see URA staff shaking their head at me that any of that was completely off track. So I think that that relatively reflects the legislation and the expectations.
There is, it's Kiana, there is the potential that the demo dollars would have to go to the URA board as well to be voted on there. And so we
Which
could.
they were not in the past.
They weren't in the past?
No.
Okay.
The demonstration dollars did not go to the full URA board for vote. They
Okay.
carried with the HOF.
Okay. So we'll
I'm
confirm.
remembering that correctly, right, Eric?
I believe so, but I haven't been here for most, if not all, of the demonstration dollar
Tina, I'm
disbursement.
pretty sure we never went to the URA board. Are you remembering anything different?
No, I don't think we did. But I don't know if I would remember if we had, but I, I don't think that we did.
Well, we're happy to take the lead on just confirming that if we did need to go to the URA board as well, we could maybe approve however much money we're putting in the bucket for emergency, like pre-approve that and let the HOF like determine where
Then
it goes.
Put it out, okay.
To help with getting it out quicker. And yeah, so we'll just kind of, as part of our review of like timeline, just confirm like what exactly our steps would have to be.
Because I think one of the things we were hoping is that maybe at the board level, it's an approval of guidelines or approval of a framework or something like that, that has that category of emergencies that we would be responding to. And anything that would fit under that would already have the pre-authorization to spend. And perhaps there would be a, dollar amount associated with that if needed.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think both frameworks we could take to the board to get there.
Well, that is actually how the demo dollars worked, because I think my memory is pretty accurate. The demo dollars worked that the URA full board approved us using the demonstration dollars in a certain amount as we saw fit. So whatever the line item was, that was what they approved for us to make our own determinations on through the spectrum of need. That is how I believe it was set up in the past.
Okay.
So my assumption is current URA board members are probably viewing it that way, as that was how it was originally launched. Us putting more deep parameters on there, sort of, I think, is us trying to do our due diligence back to the community and the URA board to say we actually have parameters on how we're using this that are a little bit more formalized and constricted.
Mhm.
But yes, if URA can do a legal review to just make sure about that. So Karen, I think you and I were on the same page there. We want to get this on the ground quickly. That means two things. One, we have to be able to make a decision on the applications. And two, we literally need to write people checks.
Check writing. Yeah, and just so you know, the URA's check writing process takes approximately 2-ish weeks. Once we have approval and staff, there's a process here that takes about 2 weeks. So I think, once we get it all hammered out, all the details, we can definitely come back with more of a detailed timeline on how much time we think it'll really take to get money out.
Other questions, comments, things that we're missing? Hearing none, I think what we would like to do at this meeting is to have a motion to move forward with this structure. Obviously, we do need some administrative items to be ironed out, the final application, anything that the URA needs from the legal team, this finalization of how we're going to review. But I think today we're hoping that we could walk away with this feels reflective of who we are, how we would like to use these dollars, gives us a great framework to move forward with. How are folks feeling about that?
I think that sounds good.
Yeah, I feel very comfortable with the framework that has been outlined.
I do as well.
Okay. With that said, Madam Chair, if I could
Yes.
just jump in and so I'd like to move to adopt the proposed HOF demonstration program guidelines as a framework for advancing the innovation pilot and the urgent emergency housing needs.
Would anyone like to second that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Lena. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you so much. I don't know about anybody else, but this feels great. And I appreciate so much the group taking separate meetings, separate times to really have this discussion and work this through so that we could get to this place really early in 2025. This is wonderful work done. Thank you to everybody. So with that being said, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the URA administrative updates.
Yeah, so we have some exciting administrative updates. We are finally getting some new HOF advisory board members. These were actually just confirmed, so I believe they're no longer recommendations, and they are, in fact, what's happening. So we have Darius Wallace from the mayor's office, Terrell Thomas representing Community South, and Rochelle Preston representing the tenant council position. They should all be, with any luck, joining us next month for their first meeting. And then we also had some reappointments. Our chair, Adrian Wanoa, and Deidre Washington were both reappointed. So very exciting. I know we've all been looking forward to having some new members for quite a while now. And these are some very important positions that will really help round out our advisory board. Right. And then we have one more administrative update. Perhaps the biggest, despite how big new advisory board members are. We are officially reopening the Homeowners Assistance Program, HAP, from the Housing Opportunity Fund. We are partnered with Action Housing Incorporated to administer grants of $35,000 to eligible applicants. These applications will open on February 14th and close on March 14th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And keep in mind, a limited number of these grants will be awarded. To find out more about these applications and to find out where to submit your application, you can either follow the link on the bottom of the screen, or you can go to Action Housing's website, the URA's website, or any of the URA's social media. So here, just for example, is the Homeowners Assistance Program page on the URA website, which you get to by going through Housing, Home Improvement Loans, Homeowner Assistance Program. If you scroll down to where it says Apply Here, it will bring you to Action Housing Incorporated's website, and here you will be able to put in your application. Additionally, there's extra information about it both here and on our website, and also our social media posts, the URA social media posts. So there is a lot of information out there, a lot of ways to get the information, and yeah, we look forward to seeing all the applications.
And can you remind us of the allocation amount?
This is for the 2024 allocation. The allocation is $3,050,000. We've been so much coordination to get this program piloted with our partner. We are actually only under agreement with Action Housing to utilize 1.5 million of that funding. And so we will be checking in with the advisory board once this application opens, and the process begins with Action Housing to start to implement the program and the improvements. We will be checking back in with the advisory board to let you all know how that's going, and potentially bring, a vote to you to utilize the full $3,350,000 of the 2024 allocation.
It's like we practiced that. That was exactly what
I
I
mean.
just wanted to remind everyone.
So just to let the advisory board members know, the change that the advisory board made to the program guidelines for HAP, changing it from a loan to a grant, does need to be finally approved through the URA board process. That will be, the URA's board meeting is on February 13th of this month. So as long as there are no issues and changes coming out of the URA's board meeting, we will continue to, open on the 14th and with this new program as a grant.
Great. Any questions related to this item? Okay, moving to item H on our agenda. We wanted to bring to the table something that came out of the Homeless Advisory Board, and I'm actually going to let Eric give the background to this
Sure.
as one of the key members on the Homeless Advisory Board.
Well, it was my very first meeting, so I'm not sure if they can call me a key member just yet, but we're working up to it. So yeah, this document, the Shelter Rights Principles, was or is a document that we, as the Homeless Advisory Board, just approved, that hopefully will be used to standardize the guidelines and the guiding principles for homeless shelters and domestic violence shelters, all types of shelters in Pittsburgh, as far as ensuring that everyone that needs housing can get it, harm reduction, the correct ways to deal with removing people from shelters if something were to happen. And it really does a lot to sort of, I don't want to just read the entire document, but it is quite comprehensive and protects, a lot of the things that the Housing Opportunity Fund, and I know a lot of the things that we here care deeply about, including personal autonomy, practicing religion, all sorts of things, because, well, not that I knew before, but it was revealed to me how inconsistent a lot of these shelters were as far as their individual unique policies. And this is a way of standardizing care that not only helps the different shelters cooperate with one another, but also make sure that everybody is receiving fair and equitable treatment. And I know Adrian was very excited to talk about the sort of broader applications of this document beyond just to the shelters that we were talking about in our previous meeting. So I think she can probably say it better than me. So I will turn it over to our chair, Adrian.
So something that we have talked about here at the HOF over time and in very different ways is this fundamental commitment to not only fair housing, but equitable housing, non-discrimination in housing, and creating housing that actually reflects the needs of the people in Pittsburgh. If we're not doing that, then we're not getting to the reason that this fund was set up. We're not getting to the affordable housing goals that we've intended. And regardless of whether or not we have as many community advocates that are joining these meetings and requesting these conversations, we still have an obligation to the folks that we serve and all of the prongs of the Homeless Advisory Board. And also, as individual practicing professionals, I think, want to bring something better to the housing market than what we've seen in the past. So for shelters, some things that are really critical and important are principles of housing first and harm reduction. I'm going to take those two sort of off of my talking points here as things that are a little deeper and wider. But if you come past principles of housing first and harm reduction, what you start getting to, I think, are core items that we as a group care about and should be thinking about in every one of our funding awards that we make. That's how people access the housing opportunity, whatever it might be, that we have unconditional positive regard and respectful treatment in those programs, that we are mindful of any type of disabling condition, whether that be emotional, psychological, social, or physical, or sensory, or a neurodivergence that exists in a person, that we want our environments to be safe, that we always have to practice anti-discrimination, and that we should have an eye to equity. And then when we start to get to things like personal autonomy, the way in which we not only provide housing, but how we mediate issues, we've done a lot to support legal assistance and mediation to meet that goal. And we also really want to make sure that culturally, from a spirituality and religious perspective, that the housing that we're providing and supporting really does make all welcome, is really accessible, and using accessibility in that context of anyone can access this housing that qualifies for the programs themselves. But another big piece of this is reporting issues and concerns. There have been times at the Homeless Advisory Board where we have actually acted as the appeal body for the URA. Brianna is on, I believe I saw Brianna. So we also, as the Housing Opportunity Fund Board, do have an obligation to make sure that when we're funding a project, there are mechanisms in place for folks who may want to appeal a decision about their entrance or may need to report concerns about the way that they've been treated in a project that we've funded. We do want to make sure we have mechanisms for that to happen. Obviously, the funding partner is the URA. The URA is ultimately responsible for having those mechanisms in place. But we, as the Homeless Advisory Board, also should be bringing to the table our knowledge and expertise and support to the URA so that if and when their process needs to be implemented, they can call on us for support, not only to address the concern of the person in the housing or housing program, but also to leverage the resources that we have individually and collectively to support a person if that particular housing option isn't the right one. So when this came at the Homeless Advisory Board, I thought it was a really great reminder to us that it's not only shelters that should be looking through these frameworks. It's supported housing options, it's subsidized housing options, it's affordable housing options. So I would like to keep this document, present in our minds as we're decision-making going forward. These are great questions to ask our housing providers. Some of them we've never asked to our housing providers. Things like, how do you mediate concerns once you've chosen a tenant? Could we have more information about your tenant selection process? Those are all important, critical things for us to keep in our field of view for 2025. So as a direct tie back to the HOF, we're not asking you to adopt these principles formally, but we would like to start using them as part of the framework for our decision-making going forward. I can't see if Megan is still with us. But just as we have tried to overlay fair housing principles, I do think that these are important principles for us to be thinking about and to really make ourselves available to the URA if they need our assistance with any of these programs, especially if there are any concerns that are raised or eligibility that has been questioned. If they need us to be there and available, that we make ourselves available to them. So certainly open to others' thoughts. We really just wanted to put this on your radar. And we may not have, additional thoughts at this time. Please keep that in your HOF binder that I know all of us have some version of an HOF file binder. Really good food for thought as we move forward on decision-making, and especially as we're going to be looking at innovative programs and emergent programs, making sure that some of these principles are embedded in those.
Absolutely. Thank you for articulating that for us.
Oh, thank you for carving some time out. So if there are no other concerns, questions, or comments related to that item, we'll move on to the state of the HOF.
State of the HOF. Short and sweet one for this month because we only have January. It is all of 2025's expenditures, of course. Most, as always, just about went out to rental gap. Homeowners assistance has been continuing. Same with for sale development. I think that's a bit of an uptick from last month as well. And down payment and closing cost, we're able to expend on a few different projects. That's it for right now. But you can be sure to check back next month and see much more going on. And then our expenditures, commitments, remaining balance. If there's any questions from the advisory board, I would love to answer them.
Questions, clarifications, concerns on the expenditures? Hearing none, and unfortunately not having any guests that would like to join us here in person for public comment. Megan, is there anything that you would like to add before we move to adjournment? Hearing no public comment, can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, James. Can we have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Karen. Our next homeless
Deidre.
advice. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was
Thank you,
Deidre.
Deidre. Our next HOF Advisory Board meeting is March 4th, 3 to 5. You can join us here at the URA offices. We'd love to have you, or virtually. As always, please feel free to invite guests to our next meeting. We would love to have more folks from the community and joining us and participating. Hearing nothing else, our meeting is adjourned for February. Thank you, everyone.